Welcome to Sanama Sports budget webinar. As you all are aware, less than 3 weeks ago, the finance minister announced a new budget for the next fiscal, and there have been a slew of changes that have been proposed. You must have seen our emails, you must have seen our news flashes, and today we're going to use this webinar where we discuss specifically about the changes that affect you as a foreign organization, as a foreign company, as to how these amendments that have been proposed they affect your business plans or your existing business operations in India. We'll also touch upon some changes related to individuals, if you are an expat or if you are an employee of your Indian subsidiary. What are the changes that affect you broadly? There have been many other changes proposed, but we are going to touch upon the high-level changes that impact on a very macro level to your business plans in India. With me today is Kapil Dua, and both of us will be talking about the specific changes from a direct tax, from an indirect tax, and from a policy perspective. Before we touch upon all these amendments, just a quick overview of what the macroeconomic indicators have been for us. There have been tremendous improvement in the GDP growth rate. We are targeted to achieve a GDP growth rate of 7.6% this year. This is the highest in the last 5 years if you use a base of 2011. We are among the top economies in terms of GDP growth rate. Inflation has drastically come down, largely due to the effect of crude oil prices. Fiscal deficits of 3.9%, that was what our target was for the initial year, that has been achieved. And the next year's target is even stiffer at 3.4%. Stock markets have been buoyant. Forex reserves have been the highest ever. That's a very, very good indicator for us. What are the challenges for the government in this coming fiscal? Improving foreign investment indicators, and of course, increasing the ease of doing business in India. That is key for the Modi government. They have been introducing a slew of measures to improve the ease of doing business in India. You have seen that the local Indian currency, that's the Indian rupee, has fallen in the last year or so in terms of comparison with the US dollar. So we are looking forward to some measures from the Reserve Bank of India as well as the central government to improve and strengthen the rupee against the US dollar. The manufacturing and banking sectors have largely been not performing in the last 2 or 3 years. So in this budget also, we have seen some measures that have been announced for them, and we are hoping that there will be more proposals and liberalizations allowed so that these sectors can improve even further. And of course, reducing litigation and bureaucracy, that's a key deterrent for many foreign investors. There have been, again, a lot of measures that have been taken. For example, the finance minister in this year's budget announced that there is going to be no retrospective taxation. There has been a major focus on increasing the use of technology in compliance procedures. So all in all, these are the challenges. This year's budget has largely been pro-domestic in terms of focusing on startups in India, focusing on manufacturing in India, focusing on the rural sector in India. Last year we saw the budget was focused more on increasing investment sentiment. This year it is more about increasing the local tax and regulatory environment. With this, I hand over to Kapil. Kapil, can you please talk about what are the major policy proposals that have been announced?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Let me try to cover a few interesting and very important proposals, specifically in the Indian policy framework, which would affect foreign companies, foreign businesses, your entities who are already registered in India, or you are thinking, to enter into Indian market. So I would start with the corporate social responsibility, which is a very good change, which in fact we also wrote to the ministries that this could lead to, the law which was there earlier was a lot of bureaucracy inside that specific law, and it was, not in favor of towards getting more business, getting more investment and funding from the Indian entity. So what they have done, specific change, is to remove the gray area where now the Indian subsidiaries of yours, I mean Indian subsidiaries who are held by foreign parents, they are easily allowed to fund towards the CSR activities. Earlier, what was happening, that as per the Indian law, they were supposed to take prior approval from the FCRA authorities, the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, which was almost detrimental to anybody, any company which is Indian subsidiary, is to wait for 4-6 months to get that approval to even give funding to any other NGOs, non-profit organizations, to use that funding, and it was a compulsory mandatory requirement as per the as per the Company Law Act 2013 for compulsory, the contribution to the corporate social responsibility. So it's a very interesting and very welcome change. The next one I would say is definitely very, very good. So now I would still say not you, because they have the government, the finance minister have said that we will allow registration of companies in India in a single day, which is a big thing. I mean, as of now, if you ask me from my experience in previous years, in fact, after the new company law, it is still taking at least 4 to 6 weeks, even if we submit everything together. And the proposal is to change that to one single day. I will be really, really happy to see that this is applicable to foreign companies, which means Indian subsidiaries are being formed with foreign director and shareholder. I assume and I feel that this will be starting with the Indian companies, like Indian director, Indian shareholder want to incorporate a company, it can be done in a single day, and within a year or sometime when they see that there is a progress, they will allow that to the foreign shareholder and foreign directors also to ease out forming and incorporating a company in India. The other important change is 100% foreign direct investment, allowed in the marketing service business, or if you are into, marketing of local food produce. So you can set up a marketing service company. The business and the object of the company is marketing and marketing of local food produce. So you can set up that company with with a prior approval from the government of India, but you can hold 100%. So which is a very good welcome change. There is further relaxation in the FDI policy in the areas of insurance. For example, in insurance now they allowed 49% under automatic route, which means you do not require any approval from the government. Earlier it was 26%. Similarly, there has been change in the asset reconstruction business. So you can set up a 100% subsidiary in India if you are in the business of asset reconstruction and if you're investing in stock exchange and other financial sector. There is one more change which I always struggle when we were helping foreign companies to set up business and trying to issue shares or different instruments. So if you are a foreign company trying to set up a company in India, having investment into India, there are in the world, if you go, there are different kind of instrument when you're investing in any country. You can issue equity shares, you can issue debenture, you can issue preference shares. So they have in this budget tried to streamline that even if you issue fully convertible debenture would be treated as equity shares. There was gray area in that where a lot of foreign companies were asking questions to the Indian government, and they have said in this budget that we will clarify and we will make new guidelines in order to strengthen that specific investment route for foreign companies. Again, very important to promote Make in India. I mean, I have never seen this change, and I really like that, because Indian government and Indian Ministry of External Affairs have never allowed any foreign resident to become resident in India. And this is a very good welcome change, which they are introducing a law where if you are a foreign investor, you will be granted, of course, subject to certain conditions, you will be granted a resident permit in India. As of now, if you're a foreign resident, you would like to come and work in India, even if you're investing in India, you can only work here on an employment visa, which is generally granted on a year-to-year basis. So employment visa in India only given to you for a year, and then you need to renew it. Similarly, business visa can be given up to an extent of 5 years, but here we are talking about resident permit. So it'll be similar to what you get in US, Singapore, UK, when you are investing in those countries, and there is a specific visa which says investor visa. So they are thinking to come up with such regulation which will allow foreigners, foreign expats, foreign investor to have a resident permit in India. The other important change for banks and for other foreign companies which are having subsidiaries in India or doing business in India is the bankruptcy court. I mean, this is similar to Chapter 11 in US, which means that you would be allowed or you will have more clarification when you want to go for a bankruptcy of your company, or I would say reorganization as a debtor. At the same time, you want to live with your company. So these clarification, this new law on bankruptcy code and regulation will allow you to do similar activities and follow similar rules, which is there in US in order to Chapter 11 and bankruptcy codes and laws, insolvency laws in UK as well. So these are I would say very welcome and interesting policy proposal in the new budget.
Thanks, Kapil. We have some questions coming in, and we'll take them up at the sort of end of the session. Moving on, I think what's also most important is to discuss what are the changes in the corporate tax regime for foreign companies and foreign organizations who are doing business in India. Obviously, the expectation is that overall tax burden should be lowered, but in effect, what the government has done is try to streamline processes, try to give some benefits, but also at the same time make sure that there is no loss, there is no net loss to the revenue. First and foremost, for manufacturing entities, there has been a reduction in corporate tax rate that has been prescribed. The existing tax rate is of course 30%, which has been proposed to be reduced to 25% for eligible manufacturing entities. However, there are some strings attached here. You will not be allowed certain deductions. You will not be allowed certain allowances. So the net effect in cash won't be as high as 5%, but there will definitely be some benefit for small manufacturing entities. For all companies who are having a turnover which is less than about $750,000, which is about 50 million INR, there has been a reduction proposed by 1% for all these companies. So that's a very welcome change. Of course, these changes do not take into account the additional cess and surcharge that is applicable, but definitely this is a very welcome change for companies. Place of effective management rules. So this is something that has been doing the rounds ever since the direct tax code came into picture, way back when it was tabled by the Congress government. So this is basically a residency test that allows companies to be taxed in the jurisdiction where their entire management is located or where their decisions are majorly taken. So, for example, if you have a subsidiary in India, but the majority of the board sits outside and takes decisions outside India, the place of effective management then becomes outside India. Similarly, if you have a subsidiary of an Indian company, but the decisions of that company, which is based outside India, is taken in India, that company is deemed to have residential status in India. So there are rules that have been prescribed for this. But the good news is that this has been deferred by a further year, so this would apply from the financial year 16-17, that is the assessment year that starts from 1st April of 2017. There are transition rules that have been prescribed, but we are yet to receive them. As soon as we receive them, we will to know what these transition provisions are. One very, very controversial topic for the past few years has been minimum alternate tax for foreign companies. There has been a lot of education on this matter, courts have opined. So this is a very, very welcome relaxation that has been given by this government, that all foreign companies who do not have any permanent presence in India in the form of a permanent establishment, and those jurisdictions have a valid double taxation avoidance agreement, they will not be subject to minimum alternate tax in India. So this is a very, very welcome change. This reduces the litigation for a lot of companies, especially investment companies which were based outside India but doing a lot of investing activities in India. Similarly, for offshore funds who were functioning in the equity markets or debt markets in India but were based offshore, there has been a lot of litigation towards that front also. So there has been a relaxation to offshore funds that if you are in a notified jurisdiction, it will deem that you do not have a business connection in India and therefore will not be taxed in India. That's another very welcome change. The next one is quite a big change that we have seen. So there is a tax registration known as PAN. So the earlier regulations have specified that if a foreign company does not have a permanent account number, that even though by virtue of the tax treaty or by virtue of the Income Tax Act is subject to a lower withholding tax rate of say 10% or 15%, he would still be subject to a 20% taxation just because he does not have a permanent registration in India. What this government has done, it has reduced this requirement and said that if you have requisite documents that specify that you are a bona fide resident of a foreign country, these documents are yet to be specified, by the way, but if you do have them, then you would not be required to take a permanent account number in India and can still avail the lower tax rate of 5% or 10% in India. That's a very welcome change. We used to see that a lot of foreign companies, a lot of clients were a little hesitant to take a permanent account number just because they would have to then file tax returns, do all of the compliances, get into the audit cycle, so on and so forth. This is a very welcome change for them. Startups, as I mentioned earlier, startups have been a very key focus for this government. So the government has proposed that all the new entities that are functioning in the technology domain as startups will be eligible for a 3-year tax holidays out of the first 5 years. There are certain strings attached when you're incorporated, what is your ownership, what kind of services are you performing, do you have any intellectual property, so on and so forth. But this is definitely a very good notification for domestic startups. It remains to be seen whether this facility and this relaxation will also extend to foreign-owned companies, but as soon as we get further clarity, we are hoping that this would be a welcome change for foreign organizations also. There has been a lot of relaxation in terms of annual compliances and tax return filings. Now you can file a belated tax return, you can file a return even if you have some tax payable. Assessment procedures have been simplified, as I mentioned earlier. There's a major focus on e-assessment, where you don't need to sort of have human intervention in the audit process. The dispute resolution panel has brought about a change where the tax officers will not be allowed to be appeal against the DRP order in the higher courts if that order is in the SSE's favor. Rectification timelines have been reduced. There have been provisions introduced to protect a taxpayer from heavy penalties. So there have been a slew of changes that have been proposed. This is definitely going to benefit foreign organizations who are doing business in India. On the flip side, now, there has been a lot of talk about base erosion and profit shifting. This is something that the OECD has issued a lot of guidelines in the recent past, and there has been a lot of talk about how global MNCs should be taxed in their respective jurisdictions, with e-commerce coming into play, with digital marketing coming into play, with the Googles of the world doing business in almost every jurisdiction. What has become very important is to identify who gets taxed and where. So in terms of online advertisement services, so if you're using AdSense, if you're using digital marketing, there has been an equalization levy of 6% proposed, where an Indian company is taking services from a non-resident, from a foreign company who does not have a permanent establishment in India. There will be a withholding tax rate of 6%. Of course, this income then becomes exempt in the hands of the foreign company, but at source, this would be subject to a minimum tax of 6% in India. Of course, with that, a lot of compliances would come into play. The taxpayers will be required to file returns so that they can claim that back in their home countries, so on and so forth. Along with these BEPS guidelines, what we've also seen is transfer pricing has become a very major focus. So the Indian government is proposing, in line with BEPS guidelines now, that there will be country by country reporting on the transfer pricing for global entities. There will also be a master country reporting where all the global transfer pricing methodologies will be combined in one report. So there has been sort of a 3 to 4 level reporting requirement that has been put on the transfer pricing. the onus of compliances has shifted to a great extent to taxpayers, and they would be required to comply with these requirements going forward. Uh, Dividends. So currently in India, when you have corporate tax profits, you are supposed to pay corporate tax on them. When you have a dividend declaration, you're supposed to pay a dividend declaration tax. A third level of tax has been introduced, wherein high net worth individuals, firms, or families who are resident in India receive more than 1 million INR in India. That's about 50,000 US dollars. As dividends in India, they would be subject to an additional 10% tax in their hands. So if you're an expat who's living in India and earns more than 1 million INR in dividend revenues, you will be subject to an additional 10% tax. So this is a huge cash outflow for individuals as well as firms who are resident.
Abhinav, that means the expats who are living in India and living in India for more than 2 years, which means they are ordinary resident in India and they are having global dividend income. I mean, they might be having shares of a US entity and they are receiving dividend from those US entity and they're receiving in India, or even they're receiving in the overseas bank account. But since they are resident in India, they are supposed to pay this 10% tax, right?
Yes, and it's going to be a big cash outflow from your tax liabilities. Of course, there will be treaty protection. There will, if you are earning dividends from a jurisdiction where there is a double tax avoidance agreement in place and you are not subject to dividend taxes in India, right, you will definitely get that benefit. But overall, you need to plan how your tax liabilities are going to be in light of this amendment. Profit and investment linked deductions. So there are a lot of deductions that are available to taxpayers, corporate taxpayers in India, if you're in an SEZ, or if you're doing scientific research, or if you're doing if you're in tax holiday. So there are being 50% or 100% of the corporate tax profits are exempt for quite a long period of time. So what this government has proposed is that these deductions will be phased over time, specifically starting from the financial year 2018-19 and onwards. What the government is trying to do is balance the reduction in corporate tax rates against these weighted and investment linked deductions. So if you are availing any tax holidays in India, it is good to plan ahead and think about how your tax liabilities are going to be in the future once this sunset clause comes into play and once you go out of the tax holiday period. General anti-avoidance rules. This is also something that has been around since the direct tax code was announced by the Congress government. Let's say, for example, many of our clients who want to restructure their India holding pattern just so that they can get a tax benefit from jurisdictions like Mauritius, from jurisdictions like Singapore, from jurisdictions like Cyprus. So what the Indian government has proposed earlier that all these transactions that intent is to mitigate your tax liability will not be considered as a legitimate transaction and you will be subject to tax in India by virtue of the general and anti-avoidance regulations. It was expected that this would be deferred to a couple of years later, but the government has still put on this and they are going to announce that they will be applicable from the 1st of April 2017 onwards. So there is no deferment, and if you are planning to restructure your India operations and your India holding pattern in such a way that there is going to be mitigation of tax, now is the best time to do it because once GAR comes into play, if your holding is being shifted to Mauritius, if your holding pattern is being shifted to Cyprus, there could be a tax bill on your hands. Singapore might still be protected because they have specific anti-avoidance regulation which is prescribed in the treaty itself. But it remains to be seen as to how the GAR provisions actually play out jurisdiction-wise. For individuals, surcharge basically applies when your income as an individual is more than 1 million INR. That's about $150,000. So if you're having more than $15,000, then you would be subject to an increased surcharge of 15% instead of 12%. There have been provisions that have been announced for Social Security and national insurance, like you have in the US and UK, you have a provident fund social security contribution in India. It was proposed that there would be taxation above certain limits of contribution. It was also proposed that 60% of the withdrawals will be taxed at the age of retirement. But these have all been rolled back very recently in view of the backlash that has been received from the public sector by the government. So a very, very welcome change that has happened after the budget actually was announced. I think these cover a lot of corporate tax proposals that have been brought about by the government. We can just talk about indirect tax proposals.
I will. Thank you, Abhinav. I could see that the questions are already coming in, and I could just see a very quick question. Of course, you will cover the other questions for. I mean, just to clarify the first point about the withholding taxes, when an Indian resident company, an individual, making payment for advertisement services, which he's buying online, for example, an Indian resident is like an Indian resident company has given service fee to Google to advertise on Google's website, and so they are supposed to make a payment to Google for those services like advertisement services. Are they supposed to withhold 6% tax?
Yes, they are. That's what the amendment says, and that is what is proposed. So, if you are a foreign company, you're providing services in terms of online advertisement to an Indian company, you will be subject to a 6% withholding tax.
Perfect. Thank you. Let me try to cover a few indirect tax proposals and changes. I mean, I would say there has not been many changes which would affect foreign companies, foreign businesses, Indian subsidiaries of foreign businesses, but I'll try to cover a few of them. For example, push to implement goods and service tax. I mean, I bless the current government. They are really trying hard to get the GST, the goods and service tax bill, passed by the parliament as soon as possible, because they know that that's a game changer. They know that once the GST will be passed, there has been a lot of clarification, leakage of tax will be reduced, and one state will be talking to the other state, and it will be controlled by state, the central government. So it's a welcome change. I heard news that it could be tabled in the next session, but of course they're trying their best to table it with the parliament in the whole group again. There is further increase in the service tax to only 0.5. Earlier the rate was 14.5, and now it will be increased to 15% from 1st of June. So that means that the services that you're buying from India, and if it is not covered by the export of service regulation, then your Indian vendor would charge you 15% service tax, which will be a cost to you because you would not be able to take any credit of it. So service tax rate has been increased, will be increased from 1st of June applicability. So in month of April and May, it is still 14.5. There has been increase in, the motor vehicles have become costlier. So you are an expat living in India or you have Indian employees, it will be burden to them. They would like to buy SUVs. So all the SUVs have been increased by 4%. The diesel vehicle has been increased by 2.5%, which are more than 1500 cc. So there has been increase to up to 1 to 4% in the motor vehicles. There has been some relaxation and technology-driven compliances which have been introduced. So earlier there was a maximum number of statutory returns which were supposed to be filed for excise duty, and if I count properly, it was almost 27 returns when you are doing a full-fledged manufacturing activities in India. Now that has been reduced to 13, so almost half. So there has been further, I would say, ease of doing business in India, reducing the paperwork, reducing the documentation, specifically when you are making in India, when you are in the manufacturing sector. Similarly, I will not say similarly, I mean, there is extra burden on filing service tax return. So as of now, if you are an Indian company providing services in India or overseas, you are required to file 2 6 monthly, like half yearly returns. Now they are asking to file annual return as well. So there will be 3 returns now, extra burden on your tax team to do more work, or for us to do more work for our clients. Standard rates, that's good. I mean, they have done changes to introduce standard rates of custom and excise duty just to rationalize the self-declaration form. So which means you can use and you can choose the standard rate, like say 10% custom duty, basic custom duty rate. And in the self-declaration, you can say that why you have chosen that rate. Otherwise, earlier there has been a huge list of rates, and you do need to consult local tax and CPA personnel to find the better rate, I mean the best rate suitable for your product. So you can just do a self-declaration by picking up the standard rate. Similarly, there has been deferment of payment of duty, which means that now you can clear your goods from custom authorities in India. Big and good change. You can get your goods cleared, and then you can defer your payment of duty. So there'll be a cash flow effect to you. You can get the goods cleared, and later on, by giving a guarantee, you can make the payment of goods like the custom duty later on. Similarly, there has been introduction of dispute resolution scheme, which means you can easily resolve your dispute which are up to the Commissioner of Appeals level in the indirect taxes like service tax, custom, excise duty, by payment of interest and penalties. If you don't want to pursue the case further and you think it's enough, I've done a lot in last 5 years or 10 years fighting with the government authorities. So they have introduced the dispute resolution scheme for the easy settlement. So which is definitely a welcome change. I would say these are a few changes which would affect, and rest all are not really affecting foreign companies. I mean, there are a number of changes for the domestic companies who are dealing domestically with the domestic customer, domestic parents. So these are a few changes. What would be the to-dos for you from here onwards? Few changes discussed by Abhinav in corporate tax, few in policy, few in direct taxes. I would say check with us how these proposals will affect or are already affecting your India business or the business which you want to set up. I would also say take the advantage of these key tax reforms just to enhance your India business. Watch out for further changes which will affect. I mean, just recently, government have when in the budget 3 weeks back they introduced a change which was really detrimental to Indian employees for their social security. I mean, the provident fund, and they were asked to pay more tax when they withdraw social security fund at the age of retirement, and they have just withdrawn and taken back that proposal, which means it's a good change. Government introduced something in the budget, and within 2 weeks there was a lot of hue and cry in India, and they withdraw that proposal specifically because it was not beneficial to the Indian employees. So just keep a track when the budget will get passed and signed by the President of India somewhere around 15th May or mid-May, I would say, and the changes in service tax will be applicable from 1st of June. So keep a track on these changes, keep a track on our website for news flashes, and of course we'll keep you posted about all these changes whenever this is enacted by the Parliament. And we hope you will not end up, getting caught at the wrong side of the law. So that's our best wishes for this budget, to be honest.
Great. We have questions coming in thick and thin. I'm just going to take up one question from Vaibhav. In trucks, what he's asking you is in terms of direct tax proposal. We talked about dividend taxation. What Vaibhav is asking is, can the dividend that has been received by an Indian holdco, would that be allowed as an adjustment against the loans that have been taken? What's your idea on that?
I mean, it's a very interesting question. So it would not be allowed against the loan adjustment because the dividend is a separate adjustment as per the Indian Tax Act, and the loan has a separate adjustment against the Indian Act. So simple answer, it will not be.
Yeah. So just to add on that, there's a section 14A which says that if your income is exempt, none of the expenses are allowed either. So it remains to be seen as to if this income is now taxable in the hands of a taxpayer. Will expenses in terms of loans and will be allowed or not? Our estimation, as Kapil rightly pointed out, is no. But we will definitely have more clarity on this once proposals are actually written into the law. One more question that we have is that you mentioned that FCRA approvals will be sort of rationalized for foreign-owned Indian companies. The question that we have is there any exemption for foreign universities also?
I mean, as of now, foreign universities are allowed. I mean, when you set up a non-profit organization in India, you would require to take a FCRA approval. And it's a very interesting point because recently, just in last 3 months, I've seen a couple of foreign businesses like organization, non-profit businesses, they have come to us and asking a clarification that when they are setting up a non-profit entity in India, are they required to take FCRA approval even in order to send the capital, like the paid up capital to the Indian company? The answer is yes, because there has been confusion given by some of the law firms, some of the bankers that no, you don't need any FCRA approval. If we go very simply on the FCRA website, we will see the frequently asked question put in by the ministries there. It is clearly saying that you do need the approval from the FCRA authorities in order to even send the paid up capital like equity capital of your Indian not-for-profit Section 8 company. So which means when you're setting up a Section 8 company, first of all, it will take 12 months or even more, and then add 6 months or more to get the FCRA approval. So there is no relaxation for universities, non-profit organization in getting that approval.
All right, we have another question. Is there any clarity on repatriation of profits from India in the cases where the parent organization is not registered in India but conducts business through a third party, which is not necessarily a subsidiary? This question is from Rohit. Rohit, I think this is a very typical situation. We would need to assess how the taxability impacts. We will definitely come back to you with this question offline and let you know what the answer is. From a budget perspective, there has been no change. There has been no comments that have been come about in this matter. One more question that we are getting in now is that is there any change that has been proposed for higher ed universities doing business in India?
Not really. I mean, the government is really pushing hard. Ministers, which Kapil Sibal started earlier, Smriti Irani is trying to lead on it, which is a Minister of Human Resource and Development, like Minister of MHRD, but not really. No specific clarity on the Foreign Education Providers Bill as of now. So I would say that the things will remain same.
All right, great. We are almost running out of time. We have a few questions more. We'll definitely take it offline with you individually, and hopefully we can answer all your questions there are. Thank you so much, Kapil, for joining us today, and thank you to all of you for taking out time from your busy schedules and discussing with us about all these changes that have come to the budget. All in all, this has been a very important budget, just like it is every year. Do keep in touch with us, and we will definitely be sending out mailers for all that proposals that affect your business in India on a long-term basis. With that, I bid adieu and have a good day, a good night wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.